Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Shit I Make My Family Watch, a podcast where I make my family and friends watch crappy horror and sci-fi movies so you don't have to. I'm your host, Desiree. In this podcast, I will give you a detailed breakdown of the storyline of this piece of crap as best as I can, and then rate these movies on my very own shit scale, a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being only a little shitty, and 5 being the worst pile of crap I've ever seen in my life. Today's piece of crap is 1999's Resurrection starring Christopher Lambert, story also by Christopher Lambert, so apparently this one was personal for him. The family member I coerced into watching this delight with me was my poor husband, as my kids quickly made excuses to go to bed early to get out of this one. We were pretty excited because we love the first Highlander and I have a soft spot for Mortal Kombat, so I was pretty sure this was going to be amazing. I will spoil the shit out of this movie for you, so if you're interested in watching it, please stop listening until after you've seen it. You get about 5 seconds. Ready? Great. We start off with a strong premise on Amazon, and they rate it 4.5 out of 5 stars, which if you're going to trust anyone's rating, please don't let it be Amazon because they suck. This movie is a prime example. We come in on 2 detectives, and one is supposed to be a transplant from New Orleans to New York, I think. Christopher Lambert plays Detective Prudhomme, who, according to the description on IMDb that I did not read beforehand, he's supposed to be Cajun. So before I spent half the movie trying to figure out what sort of accent he was doing, my husband said he thought Norwegian, I thought maybe Egyptian, which made no sense, but it turns out it was neither. Christopher Lambert is just the absolute worst at a Cajun accent. All the words he says are very slow, and he puts emphasis on the wrong parts of the words, and it was just very confusing. Anyway, his partner is the guy from Seven who had to wear the razor blade apparatus with the sex worker, and I'm just going to say he plays a much better victim than a detective. His shtick is telling, really shitty jokes, but they aren't as much shitty as just written in a way that didn't make any sense. I can't remember his name in it because it's just really that bad in it. I think it's Andrew or something. And right off the bat, we get the sense that Prudhomme has some unresolved trauma involving a dead child, based off of his emotional scene with himself in just a photograph. But honestly, they could have left out that entire, storyline, and it would have had zero effect on how this movie turned out. It did not make sense to the plot line. But anyway, moving on. Prudhomme gets sent this new case, and he's all butthurt about it when he gets there. And the other detectives are mad that he gets there, and they're like, why makes you so much better than us? Why do you get all the cases? And he's like, leave me alone, I'm depressed. I'm sorry, I'm a genius. But, his sergeant's the one assigning the cases, so I'm not really sure why everyone's mad at him. Anyway, the first body is some sort of fishing tycoon's son, and they find him strapped to a chair, and boom, right off the bat with the shocking gore, which gave me hope, Fishing Kid's arm is missing. And so they take this kid back for an autopsy, and they find a brand of a key on the back of his neck, which up close on our nice high-definition TV looks like a weird blob. And the detective's holding up keys a few inches away and comparing them to the brand. He's not even holding them the same direction of the key tines. And he's like, yes, I got it. And then they run down to the train station to a locker and they unlock it and there's a flower in there. Stay with me, it gets dumber. They trace the flower back to a botanical garden where nobody smells anything weird until they roll back a bit of grass and suddenly there's a dead body missing another arm and they're all making pukey faces. They spend a lot of time zooming in on every single person's face in that scene, including the guys you never see again, so you know it's really important to know that it stinks. Also, I believe there's some sort of Roman numeral branding or tattooing happening on the dead bodies, but it wasn't really clear with the first one they found. And through all of this, his partner is super cheerful, cracking jokes to lighten up his depressed partner, Mr. Happy Pants. So then a cop calls in another body, and they head over to the basement of some sort of building or train station. I couldn't really tell what. And for some reason, there were a lot of naked people walking around there. My husband said it was supposed to be homeless people or drug addicts, but it's supposed to be the rainy season in New York, and it's literally dumping rain in every single scene, so it feels weird to have them all naked. Anyway, they find a headless guy sitting on a toilet, which they never really go into why the killer set him on the toilet. They say it was just to make a statement because he was killed in a separate room. They never say what the statement was supposed to be, but dude, hope it wasn't crucial or anything. Anyway, this is where the partner starts losing his mind and screaming, how did somebody get their head cut off and nobody see anything? But I feel like that's kind of the MO of a big city, so I'm not sure why he suddenly got so upset about that, but it really gets to him. He's losing his shit outside. He's really upset that this guy has no head, and so they take that body back for another autopsy, and there's more Roman numerals or numbers, and then they do this weird montage scene with Detective Prudhomme thinking really hard and just repeating numbers, numerals, numbers, numerals over and over. And then all of a sudden he just knows the answer. He just knows that this guy is killing 33-year-old dudes to build Jesus for Easter. At this point in the movie, I lean over and tell my husband that I think it's the priest. I'm 1,000% positive it's this weird priest. What priest, you're asking? The weirdly aggressive priest that was in his house in 2 minutes of the movie, because the detective's wife thinks that it's weird that he hasn't visited his son's grave, who died a year ago. But I'm totally sure that this priest is the killer, because he just looks like an asshole. My number 2 choice for the killer is this other dude that we get another 2-minute meeting with when he comes in with the chief of police, and he's some sort of FBI profiler. And they find him somewhere after the second murder, and then before they go meet with him, they're laughing because they think all he's going to be able to tell them is he's a white guy between 25 and 45, blah, blah, blah. Which is exactly what he does say, and then they make it a point to emphasize that the chief let him read the case files before he even met the detectives, which is weird if you've ever seen a cop movie, because the local cops are normally super unhelpful to the FBI, and they don't ever want to give him anything. So I thought it was weird, but this guy was mayonnaise and super bland, and he was only there for 2 seconds. So I'm weird throwaway character, somehow in on it with the priest, maybe. 2-minute scene. Okay, are you with me so far? No? Let's keep going anyway. So the papers all start calling him the numbers killer, which is stupid because all the detectives keep emphasizing that they're not numbers, they're numerals. And then the detective meets with the FBI agent at a diner to vent at him about how crazy this guy is that they're trying to find. And the FBI guy is this person's actions do not reflect their state of mind, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And then he cites Dahmer and Gacy as his evidence, which, I don't know, man, seems like evidence for the opposite. And then again, it seems like a weird, pointless meeting, which should have been my clue that they want your focus on this mayonnaise man. Okay, and then Detective Prudhomme is just going on and on about how smart this serial killer is because, and he has this in quotes, there are 50 ways to fuck up a murder, and if you can think of 20 of them, you're a genius. But my guy, there are so many more than 50 ways to fuck up a murder. I mean, this guy is the limit. And it was a stupid conversation that pissed me off. So back to murder. They figure out that all the victims were names in the Bible, and one of the victims had a brother named John, so they think that he will be the next victim. They head to his house/art studio where they show some really cool paintings for a couple minutes that I'm not really sure what they had to do with the movie, but I'd really love to know who painted them. And Prudhomme finds the victim chained to a bed and missing his leg and being all squirty, and then the guy dies in his arms, and he's real cut up about it, really sad, crying and screaming, until he sees, 4 feet away, the missing leg is lying on the floor, and he's like, fuck yeah, this guy's still here, and he didn't get his leg, and he's so jazzed, and he just goes for backup, and then he lets his partner know so they can surround the perimeter. And he says it like a fucking weirdo, perimeter. Which bothered me, so had to point that out. Anyway, his partner gets tased by the bad guy who's walking around in a weird, thick pantyhose mask with just his lips sticking out. During which my husband said he looks like one of those olives with the little pimento buttholes sticking out, or something close to that. I was laughing too hard to take accurate notes of his quote. So, anyway, he stuffs his weird Kalamata mask on the partner and duct tapes a gun in his hands, and then tases him a bunch of times so he's all woozy and confused, and sends him out into an alley full of police officers who immediately want to shoot him, because, of course, they do. And the mask is so stupid. Prudhomme's like, no, don't shoot. And the cops are like, what? Shoot? Heck yeah. And so they shoot his partner in the leg with a shotgun and it gets like obliterated. And the cop was like, oops. And then they get the partner to the hospital and they tell him they're going to have to take the leg off because it's a mess. And Prudhomme is very sad, very dramatic, and like more of a reaction if this dude was his lover instead of just his partner. And so it's a very weird scene. And he like does this. I thought he was going to stab the guy, but he ends up just tucking a little knife under his hospital mattress. And his wife's like, oh, it's a Cajun superstition that if someone's in pain, you leave a knife under their mattress and it cuts their pain in half, which I've never heard of, but that's cool. That's a real thing. And then as soon as he leaves, his partner, someone steals his partner's leg. And if you think so far it's been a weird, kerfuffled piece of crap, just wait, because it gets worse. Prudhomme gets taken off the case and is all pouty at his desk at work, but the guy behind him hands him a piece of mail and he's like, this tape just came for you. And of course he plays it, and it's the killer being like, I underestimated you, so now I'm going to kill what you love most, or something stupid like that. And so Prudhomme runs home, and his house is already taped off as a crime scene, and he's completely sure it's his wife who's dead. And so he runs in, and he's, like, crying over the body, and then he rolls her over, and he sees some stupid bracelet, and he figures out that it's not his wife, it's actually their friend who was staying with them for 2 weeks, who he doesn't really like. And he's not really upset that that lady's dead anymore. He's just like, I love my wife, fuck you, lady. So anyway, after his wife comes home and sees that her best friend's been killed and she's really upset about it, they just sort of chill out and watch TV until Prudhomme starts thinking about it more. And then he like has some sort of epiphany, and they trace the tape back to some guy in his apartment who ends up being blind. Ends up being a blind guy. The killer paid $50 to read a script in Braille and record it, which kudos to the killer for being inclusive and writing up a whole script in Braille, I guess. So, like, immediately after he figures out that this blind guy is not the killer, he remembers that all of the victims had 5 quarters in their pockets and decides that since 5 times 6 is 30, the killer is doing like an atonement a la Judas for his 30 pieces of silver. And I'm still trying to figure out if he was atoning for something he did or if he was atoning for Jesus being dead, which is actually just a good deed and probably makes this all just one big misunderstanding. So then they go make an appointment to see this FBI agent and I guess get his take on everything they've collected so far. And when they get to the office, the guy that comes out to meet them is a different guy. And so they figure out that the one that they've been talking to is just some weird dude impersonating an FBI agent. And then they set him up on the phone to like catch him. And I'm pretty sure he knows what's up, but he comes anyway. And so they arrest him, but they can't hold him for more than 48 hours because they have 0 evidence. And this is the only movie I've seen where I agree with the lawyer, because the detective was all mad that he couldn't stall him for longer than 15 minutes over the 2-day hold. And the lawyer was like, dude, it's the law. You're the one who has to find the evidence, and I already let you break the law a tiny bit, so I don't know why you're mad. Okay, stay with me because it's almost done. So they let the mayonnaise guy go, but they follow him, and these cops are like the biggest idiots to walk the earth. One of them follows him into the bathroom where he proceeds to load a gun and cough to cover up the cocking noise, which totally works, and then change into his disguise in the stall, which was an old man mustache and some glasses and a security uniform. And then he crawls under the stall to the next one, and it's like a Pink Panther thing. And that cop gets totally confused and loses him, and then has to tell his buddies that he couldn't find him in the bathroom because he's a fucking idiot. This is so stupid, but it's almost done. They get a tip from a picture in a true crime magazine that they're reading back at the police station. And then they go back to the first victim's house thinking they will find him. And instead, they find like a zombie Jesus thing all rotting and gross. But like the dude didn't even try. None of the pieces are like connected. And Jesus looks like he's pregnant and smells really bad. And like, we know it smells really bad because it was literally a 5-minute montage of them gagging, throwing up, grabbing their faces over and over again in different ways. Like, I think every one of them threw up and they had to zoom in on each one doing it. And so we get that it stank real bad. And so from all this, the genius detective says he knows that the killer is going for a heart next, and they need to find a pregnant lady named Mary who's giving birth after midnight. Just any pregnant lady named Mary who's gonna give birth after midnight, which sounds easy, sure. And they find one, and they walk into the hospital, and as they walk in, there's all these dead people all over the floor. And then you see the mayonnaise guy running down the hall with the worst rubber baby I've ever seen. Like, I don't even know. It looked like an empty water baby. I don't know if anybody had those from like the early 90s. You filled up with water and they felt real. This looked like one that had been drained of all the water. It was so stupid. So Prudhomme chases him to the roof in the rain, the pouring, dumping rain again, because that's all it ever does in this movie. And they have a face-off. And it all comes to a head with the serial killer dangling the baby over the edge of the hospital roof. And the detective telling him that he's a wacko and nobody's ever going to remember him. To which the killer points out, duh, they will remember me if I drop a baby off the roof. To which I have to agree. But somehow the detective gets stabbed in the hand and catches the baby, and the killer falls off the roof. It ends with Detective Prudhomme being super jazzed and like kissing his wife and getting thank yous for this poor Hispanic couple whose baby got dangled. And everything's all great. And he's going to take some time off of work to be sad about his son. And he was super excited about it. And that's the end of the movie. So a few things that took away points, in my opinion, were the dead son storyline and the really stupid scene that shows how his son died. And it was so stupid. I can't even. It's like Prudhomme's teaching his kid how to ride a bike with training wheels. Like, it's not a bike with no training wheels. It has training wheels, and he's like holding his seat, and they're in, I don't know, maybe Central Park or some sort of public park that's kind of busy. And some jogger like bumps into Prudhomme and knocks him over, and he lets go of his son's bike. And his son just keeps pedaling, and just pedals straight into oncoming traffic. Like, doesn't even stop. And they really went for it. And they, like, showed the kid's body going under the tire, which I was like, okay, touche. But it was so unnecessary and did not help the story at all. Like, at all. They could have taken the whole line out of there, and it would have actually probably made it a little bit better. But it got extra points back for the weird twist with the mayonnaise man that I didn't guess right away. I was really disappointed that they spent very interesting screen time focusing on the priest's like creepy demeanor and face for the few little itty bitty scenes that he was in there. And his like, he was very much like a disappointed teacher every time the detective would come talk to him or come ask him about like something obscure in the Bible. And I'm leaving out a lot of the stupid Bible stuff because it was, it didn't matter that it was in there. Like, I get it was supposed to be the point of the movie, but you're not going to remember any of that. And none of the questions about the Bible quotes are ever answered or relevant in the whole movie. So, like I said, in summary, it was a terrible movie, but it got extra points for the weird twist that I didn't get right away. And all in all, I give it 3 out of 5 shits because it was a very large, convoluted piece of shit with probably the worst Cajun accent I've ever heard in my life. And I wanted to bleach stuffed cotton balls in my ears and just read it on closed captioning, which makes me sad because I love Christopher Lambert, but apparently I only love Christopher Lambert when he's an immortal swordsman battling other immortal swordsmen for the title of most immortal of immortal swordsmen. So this movie was basically a cheap Seven knockoff if there were the world's laziest necromancers involved. And now I'm going to pass the mic over for my poor husband to give his review of the piece of shit that I made him watch.
It's like Patrick and SpongeBob solving crime on Bikini Bottom. Ugh.
I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode's piece of shit or take your recommendations for future episodes of shit. So email me at ssimmfw@gmail.com. Here are a few things I've been imbibing this week that are not a piece of shit. For books, I have Come With Me by C.A. Bainham. It's brutal, it's disgusting, and it's well written. And I'm probably going to butcher this next title. I think it's Shoot Ren Ka, It's Time to Play by Eliza Frost, which is like a collection of super gnarly stories all sort of running along this evil demon jester character that's really creepy, and I'm having a lot of fun finishing this one up as well. For movies, I recommend the second Dune, but not for the storyline. Mostly just fun to watch with your eyeballs, but the story is kind of a piece of shit. Also, I'm also rewatching The Cave, which is on Netflix right now, which has Cole Hauser and Eddie Cibrian in it, and it's about like spelunking, and it's not terrible. It's only a little bitty piece of shit, so it's still worth a watch every couple of years. And I'm actually going to give a correction for the email if you'd like to recommend the next piece of shit movie that we watch. It is ssimmfwpodcast@gmail.com. So sorry, I literally just made it and I could not remember what it was correctly. You can follow us on Instagram at the same ssimmfw podcast on Instagram. And in conclusion, please go out and watch shitty movies so that we can talk about them together. And I'll see you next time. Bye.